Kobby Mensah is a political marketing strategist. And of course, he lectures at the University of Ghana Business School. Prof, thank you very much for your time. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Steve, for having
me. I hope you're well.
Absolutely. Very well.
Great. First, let me ask you whether you've seen the NDC campaign team and what you make of, first, the structure they're adopting this time around and the names on the list.
All right. Thank you. I think that if you look at the naming of the positions, it can give you an idea of the structure. I took particular interest in the Yamin one, that is the coordinator of regional campaigns. And by the way, if you look at the title of the publication, it says the national campaign, and then it gives an indication of regional campaign teams, because this is national campaign team. And it says that Yamin is the coordinator for regional campaigns. And then, of course, it goes on to mention, I think, I forgot the MP, one of the MPs, his name as the coordinator for
Richard Kwashiga.
Richard Kwashiga, exactly, a parliamentary campaign. That actually suggests a three-tier campaign team. One, the first tier is the national campaign team. Two is the regional campaign teams, whose names they didn't mention. And then, of course, they're supposed to be a parliamentary campaign team. So that gives you a three-tier front. Now, if that's what, obviously we don't have inside information, so we could actually make analysis of what has actually been presented, and that's my understanding of what I see. Now, that means that it is not necessarily different from the past, how the NDC campaign team has been structured. I mean, it is always decentralized in that sense. Maybe this time around, they didn't actually put too many names out. Of course, maybe for reasons, best known to them. But I think that it presents a very lean national campaign team, in that sense, if you compare it to, previous times when maybe extensive names have been actually put forward. So you could say that it is a decentralized three-tier campaign teams, but without plenty names put forward. What you realize also is that there was not a mention of a campaign advisory team, i.e., certain individuals. I think that there's a latter part of it that mentions Asedin Ketia, Fifi Kote, Dr. Ato Forsen.
As a steering committee, yeah.
As a steering committee, exactly. And so, unlike the MPP's one, you don't see a long list of names. And then, of course, you don't see that kind of advisory team, which I suppose definitely, it would be there, because obviously no, structures of this nature would lack, advisory team. But the point about whether it is necessary to announce it, I think that is very key to note. So it seems a very parsimonious thing in terms of the list given. And I think it is something to call for efficiency in terms of, not giving out too many or plenty names. And then, of course, you wouldn't actually be thinking, okay, what could be the roles of that? What could be the... So I think that's what I make of. In terms of the naming, of course, you realize the majority of them are old hands. You would say the experienced hands, with the exception of some few names. I haven't taken notice whether Beatrice Anna was in the last year's team. I don't think so.
No, she was not.
Exactly. And then you see Baine as well, whom I don't think I saw in the 2020 name. And so you would say that perhaps these are fresh names in the system in terms of the campaigning itself. Of course, they have been playing roles in the NDC front in terms of communication for Beatrice Annan, for example, of course, by any grassroots person. But in terms of the campaign, I think this is the first time it's been mentioned. I know that these guys, Watson and Co had already been there. Ajin Watson had been there in the last election. Obviously, so many other people on the list had been in the in the last election. So I think this is my observation for now.
And I think in the last election, what they did was name a presidential campaign team, and that's what was supposed to cover both the flag bearer and the running mates. This time around, it seems the party itself has broken the two leading faces on the presidential ballot into two. There's the flag bearers campaign team. There's the running mates campaign team. Good idea?
I don't think it's far from the last year because, as I remember, last election, as I remember, the running mates had a campaign team. So regardless of the presidential campaign team, in practice, there was a campaign team for the running mates and there was a campaign team for the flag bearer, as far as I can recall. So they probably had changed the nomenclature in terms of identifying clearly who serves on the flag bearers and who serves on the running mates. In practice, I think they're the same. If you remember, the lady of blessed memory, Trevor, was part of the running mate campaign team. And as far as I remember, there was, I've forgotten the name, but they were also on the list currently. In fact, I suspect Ajin Watson was on the running mate campaign team at the time. I'm not quite sure. But yes, what I'm saying is that they might have actually changed the name. In practice, the flag bearer had a campaign team, and then the running mate had her own campaign team in the last election as well. So I don't think it's a great departure apart from the naming.
In fact, in the last election, James Ajin Watson was the main figurehead for communications for both.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes. But having said that, I think from every conversation we've always had, we've always talked about how everything that is done by political parties is intended to send a message, to communicate something. What do you think the NDC is trying to communicate with this list?
I think testimony, you see, there must be a certain image out there. And as you mentioned, political communication is performative. Whatever you say is supposed to be something that you would do or you intend to. And then, of course, they actually send a signal. All right. Of course, if you are in a position, you cut your coat according to your size. You want to seem very parsimonious as possible. You want to be seen very efficient as possible. You don't want to be seen wasteful. All right. And I'm sure that they probably are taking clues from the idea of the flag bearer that in the next election is going to ensure a very lean government. If that's the case, of course, the sweetness of the pudding is in the eating. Can people take clues from the current list of names that you submitted as your campaign team? If you can actually do that to symbolize that, no matter how magnitude the work is, could be performed by a very efficient, lean team, then that actually sends a signal, or send a signal that indeed you actually want to walk the talk. Because what's the point in having a very huge team that many of them could be redundant or could actually present a certain chaotic feeling or a certain wasteful feeling amongst people? So I think that it could be a signal of how things would pan out, going into the election. And don't forget, majority of times, campaign teams are carried into government. Many places, if you follow how campaign teams work, these are the people that most of the time they're carried into government as well. So if you intend to operate a very lean government, of course we need to see the example, in your campaign team as well.
And I'll come to your own assessment of the list that has been put out, whether it's strong enough. But I want to go down to the spokespersons. I'm sure you've monitored the persons who have been chosen. Mr. James Adjenbuat is not a new person. And of course, Eric J is supposed to deputize for him at the running mates campaign team. And then there's Joyce Bauer Mokhtari and Beatrice Anand, both lawyers who are supposed to handle the flag bearers side. What do you make of the choices made in terms of who speaks for who?
Okay, I think that if he had followed the scene since 2020 elections, anyone who had actually followed the scene could confidently say that these people have distinguished themselves in terms of, their, job or their role as key communicators, either for the party or on behalf of the president. I mean, Beatrice Anand, for example, had been absolutely stellar from what, people actually gather from her on their performances on TV, radio. Eric had come through as one of the brightest young people, offering communication on behalf of the party. Clearly, James, nobody has to tell you, his kind of caliber of a communicator he was. Absolutely consummate. He's been there for so many years in terms of communication for the party and of course for the presidential candidate in the last elections. So I think that when you want to assess their performance, these are people who have been there in the front line. Not even talk about the very elderly ones. I mean, they have always been on that tangent in terms of the party's communication, policy positions, etc., articulating that in the media, and in public discourse. So you would not think that they do not have what it takes. Remember, this is a very crucial election that the party need to prosecute and prosecute well. You want experience and people who have been there, done that, who could actually communicate the essence of the perceived governance that they want to bring about. So I think that, you wouldn't overemphasize the importance of experience in this particular regard.
Is this a strong enough campaign team going into the 2024 elections, described as a crucial election?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to see strength, I don't think there's a matter of many people, or you would want to say a crowd. You want to see a matter of people who understand party philosophy, who understand policy positions, who understand the key issues that has to be communicated. And for me, throughout the cycle, if you had listened to the argument put forward by these individuals that are on the list, no one would tell you, the strength in their, way that they have actually, handled, the party's communication going forward. Some people would argue that you want sometimes, fresh thinking, fresh people on the ground. But don't forget, the stance of the flag bearer has also been that he wants to maintain core teams that he actually assembled in 2020 going forward. And so you could see the philosophy around how individuals have been selected, maintained the, the running mate, maintained extensively, Professor,
Professor Joshua Alabi.
Professor Joshua Alabi, for example, maintain key individuals that he has actually worked before. So I think that, in essence, you could see the philosophy in the selection of the people, in the maintenance of key people, and then, of course, in the size of the campaign team, running through, the flag bearer's ideas and how he wants to move things forward. So I think that largely you could see a certain principle running through them.
Well, there'll be a lot to talk about going forward. But before I let you go, just to draw attention to something else that's in the newspapers this morning. In fact, I'm looking at the Daily Dispatch, National Intelligence Bureau, June 2024 research, who will be best as Bawumia's running mates. There's also the ABC News. The search is over. It's Napo. NIB survey reveals. Anchor Energy Minister leads race in NIB survey as preferred candidate secures 76.27% endorsement. Is it just the West kept secret that this was always going to be the case, or are there any surprises there for you?
I mean, barring any last-minute touch, almost everybody in this country, especially people who have been political watchers, had tipped Napo to be the running mate. I think that the sticking point, or perhaps the reason why it's taking too long, was because there were too many interests. Obviously, some key figureheads had their preferences, and so the flag bearer of the NPP was struggling to name. I probably would also want to be controversial to say perhaps the sticking point was also the working relationship. Obviously, you need to develop a strategy for, working with someone you probably might think that has a stronger personality. Obviously, you wouldn't actually say that Napo is somebody that you wouldn't think that has a strong personality. He does. And he could actually tilt, sometimes we talk about upstaging, and so if you want to work with a character, Matthew Opoku-Pempe, you would want to devise a certain working strategy in terms of, a presidential ticket. And not only him, the teams around them, completely different teams, No one would actually argue the fact that Napo is very ambitious, he has a lot of drive, very, very actionable person. Now, it is a huge contrast between him and the flag bearer, which is Dr. Bawumia, for example. Completely different in the position. So, if you want to work as a head of the ticket and a running mate, you need a very solid strategy in terms of how you're going to work with the two teams, all right? And so, if there was any sticking point, I think these were the two sticking points. Other than that, everybody else in this country, especially people who are, watchers of the political system, knew that Napo would be the candidate, barring any last-minute pitch.
Prof, thank you for speaking to us.
Thank you for having me.
Professor Kobby Mensah is a political marketing strategist and, of course, lectures at the University of Ghana Business School, speaking to us this morning. Coming up, joining me in studio shortly will be Salom Dramani Jamado and Prince Derek J. Those are two people I don't need to give what they call it, what they are, what they've done, and everything. They are two persons whose voices, faces, and names you would have heard over and over again. Lawyer, let me take a break. When I come back, you complete, and then I'll have my two guests in studio.
Okay. I was here, and Cheba Bidin Como, Bibrena, and Wakasafiri Cassi, eso. I, and to Koswa, more video, and I really go 90.5 FM.